So, welcome back, everybody, from the friendly confines of Atlanta, Georgia. I am here, and Seth is over there. And yeah, we got it right the first time.
That happens every once in a while.
The old age, because we certainly have done that. Seth and Sean Sports. I'm Sean Palmer. Seth is over there. We both have guest spots on the Gary Ide Show now. So we may want to promote that a little bit. I'm on at 11:34 on Friday.
11:34?
11:34. That's what they told me. 11:34 on Friday. So what about yourself? I don't know what time you're on.
I'm on 10:20 on Tuesdays.
Okay, so now 10:22.
We had a Russell Westbrook free-for-all that brought in Tom Gugliotta and the 1968 Celtics.
That sounds awesome. We should talk about that. Look, Russell Westbrook has definitely broken one of the records that, say, 10 years ago you never thought would be broken.
Yeah, look, it's an amazing accomplishment. But this was the point that I was making, is 40 years ago, no one cared about it.
Correct.
So Gary's argument was, look, it's an amazing accomplishment. That he's averaged it for a season is incredible.
Yeah.
And Westbrook is an unbelievable talent. But I don't think Oscar Robertson during the 60s was really worrying about, oh, God, I got to hit a triple-double. I don't think that was a concern of his. I don't think it was a concern when Wilt Chamberlain led the league in assists, where he could have had 8,000 triple-doubles. I don't think he really was worried about, geez, I could either worry about trying to sleep with 10,000 women, or I can try and get 1,000 triple-doubles. I think he went to the former.
Well, let's play it the other way, though. But since then, say over the last 20 years, like since Magic, right? Mm-hmm. Or even the last 40 years since Magic, it's an impressive number, not because he broke Oscar Robertson's number, but because
it's just impressive.
He's so far ahead of, once it has become one of those things, that nobody else has done it either, right? I mean, look, Magic probably, if triple-doubles were a thing, probably would have had a multitude of those. But you've had the Jason Kidds, who basically was a triple-double machine during his heyday, and coming nowhere close to this. And even more so, the numbers that Westbrook is putting up, he's not putting up 10, 10, and 10.
No,
he's putting up 24, 18, and 24.
He has been mind-boggling in the last 6 weeks. I mean, incredible. And one of the things we talked about on the show was that is the lower tier team nobody wants to play.
Agreed.
The Celtics without Jaylen Brown are done.
Yes.
Nobody is scared of Indiana.
No.
Nobody is scared of Charlotte.
Nobody's scared of the Knicks.
No one. Oh, no. The Knicks are a 4 seed, so they're not low.
Okay, fair.
Look, you had the first 3 in anything else. But the one thing you would look at is, especially, I think the Nets and the Bucks are the 2 best teams in the East. I do.
Okay.
I do think that there is I do think, though, the team that would scare, I do think the Washington, it's scary to the Nets, because Philly has Tobias and Simmons, great defenders. Mm-hmm. Milwaukee has Drew Holiday, really, really good defender. We're talking backcourt here.
Sure.
The Nets have Nets just outscore everybody.
Correct.
And when you're going against Beal and Bradley Beal, who's 1N, 1A for the scoring title with Curry, and Westbrook, who's playing out of his mind, I don't think they would beat the Nets. But that is not I don't think that's a matchup they want.
Look, let's look at the numbers here. And Bradley Beal is averaging 31.4 points a game. So for all those people that thought Bradley Beal is leaving Washington, Bradley Beal leaves Washington when Bradley Beal wants to leave Washington, and not before that. And he signed a 3-year extension last year. Unless there is a reason for him to leave, he's not leaving. So all those trade offers that you may have, Bradley Beal is ingrained in the fabric of this team. He's not going anywhere from Washington. Then you have Westbrook, who's only averaging 22, 11, and 11. And, I mean, that's his average. And you're right. Over the last 6 weeks, he's killed it. Killed it. He's averaging 9.9 defensive rebounds a game, almost a triple-double just with defensive rebounds, and that's from a guard. So you're right. They could put up 80 on any given night, those two, and totally scare any team. I mean, if they had Thomas Bryant in the middle, they would be a much scarier team because Bryant gives them something that they don't have anywhere else. I mean, their top center right now is Robin Lopez and Alex Len. Yes, you're Alex Len. So, I mean, neither of which are starting centers in the NBA right now. So, if you're looking to play the Wizards, you're looking to, believe it or not, to slow down the game, not speed it up. And this is where Harden is perfect. I mean, Harden will just slow it down, take all 24 seconds of the clock, and get a foul with 1 second left on the shot clock. I mean, that's generally his way. So, yeah, this is the scary team. If you're looking for the scary team in the East, you're absolutely right. It's not the Pacers. It's not the Hornets. It's certainly not the Celtics. The Heat have done nothing this year that have backed up what they did in last year's playoffs. They're 37-31. Just barely getting out of the play-in round. And those are your 4 teams. So one of those teams, look, wouldn't you love to see a Washington 76er first round? Like, I think legitimately that could be an 8 taking out of 1.
I think that's a tougher matchup because Philly is so good defensively and has no response to Embiid. I think the Nets are the best matchup for Washington. I would prefer, as someone who roots for the Nets, at least peripherally, I would prefer them to play. I would prefer them to play somebody else. But whoever Washington plays, Washington, and we've never said this about. I don't think we've said this about the Bullets since the Wizards. Excuse me.
Since the Bullets. Since they were the
Bullets with Gugliotta and Chris Webber, or was Webber traded for Gugliotta? I always forget they had 1 year with Gugliotta and Wizard and Howard and Weber in like 94, where they were like the coming of age team right after the Nets with Anderson and Petrovic and Coleman were the coming of age team. Yeah. Except Petrovic died and the Wizards traded Weber for one of my all-time favorite players, Mitch Richmond. Love the player. Terrible trade. But they're not a team people are going to want to play.
No. Well, and look, remember the rules, ladies and gentlemen, with regards to these play-in games. So 7 is going to play 10. So that means the Celtics will likely play the Wizards. And then you have Charlotte playing the Pacers. And Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, the higher seed gets basically a 1-game advantage. They have to win 1 out of the 3. While
there was 1 out of 2.
Oh, is it 1 out of 2? You're right. 1 out of
that's the only thing that makes sense.
Right. It's 1 out of 2. And the lower seed has to win both games. Yeah. So I would actually pick the Wizards over the Celtics right now without Jaylen Brown. And then they would get I don't know how that works. So if the 10 beats the 7, are they still the 8? I guess they still are, right?
I would think so. I would think you would reseed after the play-in.
So
and I think this is kind of interesting.
This coming from the guy that didn't
hates the first 4.
Yeah, and does not like the play-in round.
No, I like this.
So the Knicks are 1 game up on the Hawks for the 4 seed. Look, it's going to be Hawks, Knicks, Hawks. It's going to be one way or the other, right? Except for the fact that Miami is only 2 games behind the Knicks. So
no, they're 1 game behind the Knicks and a half game behind Atlanta.
No, they've played 2 more games. Oh no, they haven't. I'm sorry. They played. No, you're right. They're 1 game behind.
Yep. I'm literally looking at ESPN.
I know. So am I. So the Hawks have 2 games in hand on the Knicks. No, 1 game in hand. So it's 1. They both have 1. So the Hawks have 1 game in hand on both the Heat and the Knicks going into the last week. And then in the West, you've seen Denver drop a little bit, which we expected with Jamal Murray being out. Utah is going to take home that 1 seed. And the Lakers are going to probably be in the play-in round. And the Lakers are going to play the Spurs in all likelihood. And Golden State.
Not this isn't 2005. It's not really that exciting of a matchup.
No, but the Lakers being in the play-in round makes it more exciting than if they weren't. Yes. Especially if you're an East Coast fan, where you're probably not going to watch Memphis play anybody unless it's.
No, I would watch Memphis Golden State over the Lakers San Antonio.
Really?
I would much rather see Curry versus Morant than LeBron versus DeRozan.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Ryan Forbes.
DeJounte Murray.
Exactly. DeJounte Murray. There you go.
Derek White. And then my sixth seed, which I had going to the West Coast Finals in my preview, is Portland. 5 seed being probably the Mavericks, 4 Denver, 3 the Clippers, 2 the Suns, and 1 the Jazz. So the Knicks go and lose, and then they go and beat the Clippers. Knicks kind of for real, a little bit. I mean, they're
a legitimate 4 seed.
Yeah,
they've been fantastic.
They're a 4 seed. They're a 4 seed in a conference of 3.
They're not better than the Nets. They're not better than Philly. They're not better than Milwaukee. They're just not. Randall has been sensational this year and deserves borderline first team All NBA, top 5 to 7 MVP voting. He belongs there. The rest of the team is not good enough I don't think Randall is not Embiid, he's not Giannis, and he's not Durant or Harden. He's been sensational this year, and they deserve an enormous amount of credit. And I don't think I want to play them, but they're kind of the Purdue of the NBA. They're going to give you a tough. They'll win their first round. I think they would beat Atlanta, although I think that would be a pretty entertaining matchup actually. And then they'll give whoever they play a tough 5 to 6 game series, and they'll go down fighting. Look, those teams are tough. They just don't last.
I will tell you, I wish Derrick Rose played a little more this year. He only played 32 games. He's only started 3, but he's averaging 14.5 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds. Like that's 6th man of the year stuff. If you played more than 32 games, the problem is he only played 32.
Yeah, and I think this year, the team has won like most. Sorry, please go.
Yeah, but the team has won like 65% of the games that he has played it.
Yeah. As I said, they are a good team. What I wonder is how long they will stay a good team. Meaning, you're going to have to re-sign Randall after next year. I'm assuming you're going to. We talked about this. I don't think you sign him to the max this year because you have one more year. You just pick up the option and call it a day. But it's going to be interesting. Are you going to pay Julius Randle $200 million, $180 million?
Well, number one, they can't after this year. It's only after next year. So they can extend him for $100 million over 5, which he won't take.
He won't take. They would do it in a millisecond.
By the way, they're 14-5 since April 3rd.
Oh, they've been excellent.
Right? I mean, no, I didn't realize that. Like they were 14-5. So that and the losses are to Denver, which not surprisingly, Jokic
that's an awful matchup for the Knicks.
Without Mitchell Robinson, that is a horrible matchup. Phoenix, okay. I mean, Phoenix is number 2 in the West. Boston, before they lost Jaylen Brown, which I think is a horrible matchup for them as well, because when you have Brown and Tatum, that's just
they're not set up for that kind of matchup.
And Brooklyn, which okay, I mean, again, if you lose to Brooklyn, and they lost to Brooklyn by a bucket, so
yeah, they were down 20. They were down. That game wasn't that close.
Randall had 15 rebounds and 12 assists. Like, right, exactly. Like, yeah, he's playing out of his mind. But I'm looking for. Look, I haven't watched a lot of NBA except sitting on your couch. I will say that's probably the first time I legitimately watched the NBA this year, because I really feel that the NBA is the ones. Well, I think basketball in general, college and pro, is where you miss the fans the most. I mean, hockey is one thing, but you never see the fans on TV anyway. I miss the fans in basketball. I really do. I think hearing the squeakers, the sneaker squeaks, is not something I want to hear. I have no desire to hear that. And but they're going into the playoffs, and they start. Well, they have a couple of games left. They play. The Knicks have 4 more games against the Lakers, San Antonio, Charlotte, and Boston. They should be favored in 3 out of those 4 games. The only one not being favored is at the Lakers tonight.
Which is a toss-up because the Lakers were – I mean, we don't know if LeBron is coming back.
Correct.
Before the playoffs, excuse me.
Yeah.
They played very, very well. It was either last night or 2 nights ago against Phoenix, but they crapped the bed against Portland 2 days earlier. The Lakers are without LeBron are up and down. You know, Davis has not been great this year. And although he was brilliant 2 nights ago. So you don't really know what you're getting. Look, the Knicks are still not overwhelmingly talented, though.
No.
So, you know, and that's why, look, when you're looking, there's really, in my mind, there are 3 coaches for Coach of the Year, and there's really nobody else. I mean, there's Thibodeau, there's Quinn Snyder, and there's Monty Williams.
Yep.
I don't know who else you'd even put. I don't even know who else you'd put in the realm.
No, and if you want to put a nod to Chris Paul, the coach, I think he would be in there as well. Look, I think it's Phoenix's to lose. I think it's Monty Williams to lose. He has made that. Thibodeau has done wonders, no question about it. But you're still the 4 seed. If you are the 2 seed in the West, in a loaded West, I think you take that over. It's interesting looking at the minutes, and you and I have talked about Tom Thibodeau running down his team, right, over and over again. Okay, so Julius Randle is averaging 37 minutes a game. That's a lot. That's a lot. RJ Barrett is averaging 35 minutes a game. That's a lot. But the next highest is Reggie Bullock, averaging 29. And Derrick Rose is averaging 26. So he's leaning on his stars. I get that, but that's
not bad.
No, this is not the Thibodeau that we know.
Well, then maybe what happened is what Thibodeau is possibly potentially learned, you know, over the years. I don't know, or maybe he just.
Well, you hope, right? Well, if you look at to compare, right? So Julius Randle is averaging 37.2. You go over to Washington, Bradley Beal's averaging 36, and Russell Westbrook's averaging 36. Okay, I mean, you're going to run your stars, right? That extra minute is not going to make a difference between 37 and 36. You run your stars. So you look at the Wizards. The Wizards have a lot, as you said, they don't run as many people. Ryu Hachimura is averaging 31.4. Did I pronounce that right at least?
No, I think for once, I think you did a good job with that one.
Thank you. Well, phonetically speaking. Anyway, but looking over to let's look over to the West a little bit. And we talked about this a little bit last week. I'm really discouraged that the Mavericks came back since the Knicks owned their first round pick. And now I was hoping for a flop, and Luka just didn't do it. 40-28, I believe, after starting their season like 1-10. I mean, they were horrendous at the beginning of the year. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I'm looking up their schedule. They were 2-3, 2-4, then 1. No, they were probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They were 7-13 in their first 20. So there was hope for me. And then, no, Luka just.
Let's be honest. There's never been hope for you.
They've won their.
You've never had much hope. Come on.
They've won 7 out of their last 8, and Luka's having a Luka year. I mean, look, 28.2 points per game, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds. If outside of Russell Westbrook, he's having pretty much the best all-around year in the NBA.
And the funny thing is, neither of those are going to be in the top 3, most likely, for MVP.
So who are your MVP candidates right now? Chris Paul's got to be in there, right?
It's Jokic 1.
Yep.
It's
Embiid
Embiid 2. It's Curry 3. And then you have this kind of confluence of Randall, Chris Paul, and Doncic are your 4 or 5. Some combination of that group. Paul doesn't have the statistics.
Yeah.
Randall, I'd probably put Randall 4. I mean, Randall has carried that team to a 4 seed.
Okay. By the way, we're looking at minutes played. Rick Carlisle, 35 for Doncic, 31 for Porzingis, 29 for Hardaway Jr., 31 for Josh Richardson, 32 for Dorian Finney-Smith, 29 for Maxi Kleber.
Maxi Kleber?
Yeah, I mean, he's not leaning on – the bench is like 15 minutes a game. Like, he's not using that bench at all.
It's funny. I wondered this a couple years ago at Tomlin, and I was wrong. I wonder if Carlisle is in trouble at some point. That team hasn't gotten any better. You have one of the top 5 players in the league.
Yep.
You have what should be a definitive number 2.
If he stays healthy. He's played 40 games this year.
You have a relatively good complementary players. And I think Carlisle is a hell of a coach. I do wonder, though. I mean, they've done nothing. This year has been, as you said, kind of a disappointment. I wonder at some point, not that I think the Cubans firing him the day after the season's over, but I wonder if this is kind of, hey, you've got to be better next year, or we have to start looking at this. He's been there 16, 17 years. At a certain point, things run their course.
I agree with that. And we talk more in line with the Celtics about cap construction and how you spend your money, right? And I think the Mavericks are a good case, much like the Celtics, of poor cap management. So they have Luka, who's only earning $8 million this year, which is ridiculous. They got 19 in Hardaway, 13 in Redick, 11 in Richardson. So their shooting guards are taking up $41 million of the cap. And none of them, I mean, Hardaway Jr. is a good player, but
he's a nice complimentary player, yeah.
Complimentary player. Small forwards, all they're playing is Dorian Finney-Smith, and they're playing him 31 minutes a game, which makes sense because he's the only small forward they have. And they're paying him 4. Now let's look at the power forwards where they have Porzingis on a max contract and Kleber earning 9. So it's $35 million there. I just think that the cap construction, and at the end of this year, they will have room, if they want, for a max player.
Yeah,
is Porzingis, and this is what the Knicks were afraid of, and really why the Knicks traded him. And you and I discussed this when the trade was made. I remember exactly where I was when the trade was made. And I said, you know what? You don't want to pay this guy a max contract because you're afraid of his health.
Yep.
And they are stuck paying him $30 million, an average of $34 million over the next 4 years for a guy that's playing 40 games. Is that where you want to spend your money? If he's healthy, great. He is. He's a power forward, probably a top 5 power forward in the NBA. But 40 games a year for $34 million just doesn't cut it. Porzingis isn't a number 2 if he's only playing 40 games a year.
Well, the other question is, I'm looking quickly at the free agent rankings for the top players for the free agency.
Sure.
Kawhi's got a player option. He's going nowhere.
Nowhere.
John Collins, we've discussed. He's not a fit. I don't think he's a fit in Dallas because you think Atlanta's.
As a rim runner, I think he probably is.
Actually, he may be. But we think Atlanta's going to end up matching because he's restricted.
No, he's not. John Collins is not restricted this year. He's unrestricted.
I'm looking at Hoops Hype and they're saying restricted.
Okay. Well, okay. Anyway, continue on.
Mike Conley. Mike Conley's not coming to Dallas.
Mike Conley wouldn't fit in Dallas.
No.
Wouldn't matter anyway.
Oladipo, no.
No.
Jared Allen, well, you have Porzingis. He's restricted as well. DeMar DeRozan, not a fit. Chris Paul, not a fit. I mean, Chris Paul's a fit anywhere, but Chris Paul's not coming to Dallas. Al Lowry, not a fit. Lonzo Ball, not going to Dallas. Andre Drummond, certainly not a fit. There is no free agent really worth going after at the max, at the high end.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying. Why did I think John Collins was an unrestricted this year for some reason?
I don't know. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Where's your head at, dude?
Hold on a second. Anyway, John Collins. He signed a 4-year contract. Yeah, you're right. He's a restricted free agent. So if they offer him a max contract, he'd have to hold. They'd have to match it.
I don't think he wants to stay, but look, if you're getting $140 million over 4 or whatever it is for his, because he's not an all NBA, he doesn't get the super bird, right, the super max or anything like that. So I'm assuming it's 140, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere around that.
We all should have such problems.
Yeah, Jared Allen's on a rookie contract.
Wait, maybe you can hang out with John Collins. You're down in Atlanta with him.
I would love to hang out with John Collins. Not Lou Williams, but John Collins.
No, you like to hang out with Lou Williams too.
Sweet Lou. So what they could do is make a trade, right? They could make a trade for John Collins. They could make a trade for Jared Allen if the teams are not willing. A sign and trade if you can open up that amount of cap room, which we said that they have. Yeah. So that may be an avenue forward. The issue is they don't have a first-round pick this year, and they don't have one in 2 years because they traded those to the Knicks. So they're looking a couple of years down the road, and whether Atlanta wants to go down that road, I don't know. But they're not – you're absolutely right. They have not progressed, but my contention is with what talent do they progress? I just don't see the talent on that team to make that leap. Unlike teams like the Timberwolves who have an array of talent and just can't make it at all.
Well, this was a weird year for them in general. They had more COVID issues than most. Russell's been out. I mean, if they can keep their pick, and again, they traded. I forget what it is. It was a top three protected.
Top 3. Yep.
Top 3 unprotected. You have Edwards, who looks like he's going to be a real player. You got Towns, who's a top 5 guy. Russell will be back. If you can get Rubio's decent, but if you can get a Cade Cunningham, if you can get a 4 who would fit with Towns, whether I don't know if Evan Mobley can move down, it can jump down or drop down or not. You may have something, but so we're a week away from the playoffs for the most part. So I gave you my top 5 for MVP. Is yours very different? I'm assuming it's
no, it's in the ballpark, and I think Westbrook has to be up there in that list in the top 5. Maybe he's 5 or 4. I mean,
the last 2 are almost like a transient.
I don't think Embiid gets as much love as you think he does. I think that he is not a top 3. I think they penalize him a lot for missing as much time.
He missed 25 games. I mean, he missed 20 games. You can't blame him.
Well,
I mean, that's why you can't mention LeBron. LeBron's missed half the season.
Right. And that's why I don't think he's a top 3 MVP, is I think when you miss basically a third of the season, you can't be an MVP candidate. And it lends some credence to how much love really is Ben Simmons going to get, because Ben Simmons has been tremendous for this team this year. He
even hit a 3.
No, I mean, look, Embiid has played in 50 games. To be fair, Simmons has only played in 55, and Tobias Harris has played in 59. So nobody's really played in a ton of them except for Dwight Howard, who's played in 66. But I mean, Simmons is averaging 14, 6, and 7. 7 and 7. 14, 7, and 7, which in a normal year, that's probably 3rd team All NBA with the way that he plays defense.
Okay, based on that, yeah.
Yeah, with the way he plays defense.
14, 7, and 7 is a very good player, but 14, 7, and 7 is not an All NBA. Based on his defense, you can kind of look at it like that.
He's no Alex English. And then you have Tobias Harris, who has 19, 7, and 4. is he earning his I mean, this is another team. You and I have discussed this. John Hollinger discusses this all the time on The Athletic. Cap jail, right? Where you sign a player to too much money because you can't replace the guy. And Tobias Harris is definitely one of those players. Nice player, didn't need to sign a max contract. Kristaps Porzingis, another guy, nice player, not a max player. And I think
can we call it, instead of cap jail, can we call it the Otto Porter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Otto Porter is another guy, right? But he's coming off
the Nicholas Batum syndrome.
Oh, Nicholas Batum. No, but the thing is, yeah, because Nicholas Batum did it in Charlotte. Yeah, he did it in
he was $132, I think. It was absurd. It was amazing.
They re-signed him in Charlotte. But I think what you said was accurate. And if we're looking at sixth man of the year, I think Shake Milton has to be in that conversation, averaging 13, 3, and 3.
It's Clarkson's award. There's no even need to discuss.
You think so?
Yeah.
See, and Clark, I guess a sixth man in your mind, if you're giving it to Clarkson, is only an offensive player.
When you're having the year that Clarkson is having, I'll read the numbers. I think he's third in the team in scoring.
18, 4, and 2.
Yeah, I mean he's second behind Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
So, yeah, 18, 4, and 2. His PR is 17.
Yep.
He's shooting. What is he shooting? He's shooting 42%. But he is their dino off the bench.
And he's playing 27 minutes a game.
Yeah, he's playing an enormous amount. He's been excellent. And that team, it's funny. Everyone is under kind of looking at that team and kind of writing off Utah and writing off Phoenix. I mean, the Lakers don't look good.
No.
Portland is a horrible matchup for the Clippers. Horrible.
I'm telling you, I'm riding with Portland.
I don't blame you. I'm right there with you.
I said it at the beginning of the year. I'm riding with them to the conference finals. I think Nurkic coming back is a huge deal for them.
Because you have your 5 of, with Anthony being ancillary. Anthony's dangerous as ancillary. He's just not dangerous as your number 1. And look, every year they have the same problem. Every year they have injuries and something goes wrong and their front court gets depleted. And this year, look, they were injured a lot in the beginning of the year, but they've been on a good streak. And that's the team in the West I don't want to be anywhere near.
Well, and that's also this year they complemented the team, right? They added pieces which they normally don't. They added a Robert Covington, who they normally don't add to play the power forward position. And he's a complementary piece. They normally, in the past, have gone for scoring without complementary pieces. They've done a really good job of surrounding some of these stars, and they do have legitimate stars in CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard. But they've complemented them with guys like Derek Jones and Robert Covington and Nurkic and even as you said, Carmelo Anthony.
And Norman Powell has been sensational for them.
Right. So they've done Norman Powell's averaging 17.5 points a game in 34 minutes. I mean, they're playing him and playing. Yeah. Carmelo's only started 3 games this year, but averaging 25 minutes a game. And Covington's playing 32 minutes a game and has started every game. So this is a deep team. This is a legitimately deep team.
It's a deep team compared to what they've been in the past.
Correct.
They're not an overwhelming, they're not Milwaukee deep.
No, but look at the West. So they're deeper than the Lakers.
Yes.
They're deeper than the Clippers.
Yes.
They're deeper than the Nuggets with no Jamal Murray and Harry Harris. Right?
The West is going to be so much fun to watch because going in, I think I had Denver in the finals, if I remember correctly.
No, you and I didn't.
Well, we didn't do it. I had to miss it. That's right.
Okay, hold on. Let's continue. They're deeper than the Mavericks. We just talked about that.
Oh, yeah, Maverick, yes.
Certainly deeper than the Mavericks. Are they deeper than the Suns? Probably, maybe on an even keel. They're not as deep as Utah. No team is as deep. Utah's the deepest team in the league.
Yeah, Utah goes about 8 or 9 real deep.
They can survive. They can survive a bad night by anybody but Donovan Mitchell.
No, they can. No, I disagree. They can survive Donovan Mitchell having a bad night. The guy that they can't survive having a bad night, not from an offensive standpoint, from a team standpoint, is Gobert.
Okay.
Because Gobert is the heart of their D.
But again, this is a 7-game series, right? So they could probably survive. Okay. They're deeper than the Warriors, they're deeper than Memphis, they're deeper than San Antonio. I mean, so they're deeper than every team but Utah definitively.
Is this the first year in 10, 12 years that the winner of the East, assuming it's one of the top 3, is going to be favored to win the championship once you get to the finals?
Yeah.
I mean, since the Miami teams with LeBron,
yeah,
I don't think we've had a West, maybe except 20. Yeah, since the Miami teams with LeBron, I don't think we've had a team in the East that's been favored. I would favor probably whoever comes out of the East over most of these teams.
Was Milwaukee favored last year to come out?
To come out of the conference,
but they didn't. No, to win the whole thing.
They were, but they didn't get past Miami.
Right, but what your point is, you said, is there an East? Is the East going in favored? My point was,
I mean, once you make the finals, are they coming in? Assuming one of the top 3 from the East comes, would they be favored probably over most of these teams?
I don't think Philly would be favored.
I think the Nets would, because if the Nets,
if Philly played Utah, Utah would be favored.
That's a good matchup.
That's an amazing matchup.
Nobody would want to watch it. It's a terrible matchup for ABC.
No, but I don't think. Oh, it's not a terrible matchup for the fans. The fans would love.
But the casual fan's not going to want to see that.
No, but Gobert against Embiid, and then Donovan Mitchell against Tybo, and then Joe Ingles against Tobias.
It's a good matchup.
That's a great. The 76ers against either Utah or Phoenix are probably the best matchups. If you're looking, and second, look, the Nets are a bad matchup for everybody, and everybody's a bad matchup for the Nets. Because the Nets play a different style than everybody else in this entire league right now.
Yep.
No, they don't play any defense. So the Bucks against Utah would be fun, but you want less people tuning in than a 76ers Utah. Put in Milwaukee. Because Milwaukee versus Utah,
it's Adam Silver's nightmare.
It is. Yeah. I mean, Adam Silver is rooting for Brooklyn to come out of the East. No question. Yeah. Right? Because he wants to win.
They want a Brooklyn Knicks conference final. They want a Lakers-Clippers conference final.
Oh.
And whoever comes out, comes out. That's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right. So right now, the Clippers would face Portland in the first round.
Yeah. I'm not sure I wouldn't take Portland.
Well, we can certainly make our picks next week, but I like that matchup for Portland. I really do. I just think that the Clippers side cast behind the big 2 has done nothing to impress me at all. I mean, Paul George is Paul George and Kawhi is Kawhi, but regular season Kawhi has not been playoff Kawhi. And until they flip the switch and playoff Kawhi comes back, I have nothing for the Clippers. So we talked a little bit about the NBA just now. Well, let's move over to the NHL very quickly. Because yeah, exactly. But no, this part, we're not going to talk about the playoffs. We'll do that next week.
Playoffs.
I do want to get your take. Look, you're in the New York area. I'm an Islander fan. What did you think about the Rangers cleaning house last week.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
I know you're not a hockey fan. You're a casual.
I know what's going on.
Right.
I mean, the rumor was that Dolan was pissed that John Davidson, who is kind of a beloved president of the Rangers, did not back him as much on the letter he wrote to the NHL, expressing his frustration about the Tom Wilson penalty, the Tom Wilson fine.
And he wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't. Very, very rarely do we agree with James Dolan on anything.
And very rarely does an Islander fan agree with anything that a Ranger fan does. So,
no, I'm not a Ranger fan.
No, I meant the Ranger team.
But the idea that the Rangers got fined $250,000 and Tom Wilson got fined $5,000 pretty much explains Gary Bettman's commissionership over the last 25 years. Supposedly he was pissed that they didn't back him enough, and that was the catalyst to get this started. The Rangers, out of what I can tell, and look, I am know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know the minor leagues of hockey. But what I understand is they've done a very nice job rebuilding this team, and would have been a legitimate playoff threat come next year, and would have gone going forward. It puts your coach David Quinn in a hell of a predicament. You're replacing people who've done what's considered around the league as a pretty good job. So there's no running. As much as being the GM for the Rangers sounds great, it's not that attractive a position because some of the guys who did such a good job in the first place are no longer there. And who wants to file somebody who wants to follow somebody who does that? Like, it's just not great.
Look, for the same reason that you didn't want to join the Mets when Fred Wilpon was there, the same reason that you don't want to join the Knicks when James Dolan is there, you don't want to join the Rangers when James Dolan is there. The unfortunate part is two of those are the same guy. And as an Islander fan or an Islander supporter, I don't think we could be fans, but I guess I'm a fan. An Islander fan, I will tell you, every Islander fan to a T is scared of the Rangers and scared of what is coming down the pipe because, as you said eloquently, yes, I called you eloquent with regards to your NHL knowledge. They are,
Does that hurt a little bit?
What?
Does that hurt a little bit?
No. I'm good. They do have the best talent in the minor leagues. They have the number one talent in the minor leagues. What I believe happened is James Dolan didn't get results quick enough, as James Dolan tends to do. In that 3 years ago, he signed off on a rebuild. They are 1 year away from that rebuild being pretty much in the playoffs. And they got spanked by the Islanders twice in a week. And he doesn't like – this is like George Steinbrenner 102 if George Steinbrenner was 101. I mean, this harkens back to the day that Billy Martin was fired because the Mets won 3 in a row. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but James Dolan is the new George Steinbrenner. I mean, for lack of a better term. Everything is impulsive, and I'm very happy for some reason that he let Leon Rose be the GM because we haven't heard from him as a Knicks fan all year. There has not been a Charles Oakley sighting at MSG, but other than that, I think we're doing pretty well. But it was pretty shocking to me that he would take the boot to Davidson more than anybody else. Davidson is, you're absolutely right, beloved by former announcer, former president, former everything Ranger, and I believe he's actually in the Rangers Hall of Fame. And they just took an axe to him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was signed up by NBC to do some color commentary.
He was wonderful. I remember he was great doing it.
He was great. Well, you know it's not going to be Doc Emmerich because he retired. So I'd like to see JD back in the booth. So we had a forced retirement last week, or in the last week, or it will become a forced retirement, in my opinion. So nobody likes to push somebody out. Nobody likes to say you're a legend and you can no longer play. And I think that Seth and I have rooted for players that have become that. One of them in a Knicks uniform was Patrick Ewing. where his just skills eroded to the fact that he wasn't worth the money and wasn't worth playing. Then you had other players that did the same thing, Gary Carter with the Mets. Well, one such player, Albert Pujols, was this week. And Seth, it's been fait accompli for 2 to 3 years, if not 4 to 5, that this was going to happen and going to end badly. And the fact that it ended badly 20 games into a season is no surprise to me, other than the fact that the Angels decided to bite the bullet.
Ended badly? It never started well.
Started badly?
It started badly. He was already, in retrospect, now look, he's going to go down as a top 3 first baseman of all time. Somewhere below Garrett, kind of in the Jimmy Fox, Eddie Murray. I'd probably have him above Murray. Jimmy Fox.
He's above Murray. Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah, he's above Murray. I put him right above Fox.
So you have him number 2?
I have him number 2.
Okay. So, but when has he been a legitimate top 10 player in the American League since he joined California or Anaheim? Maybe the first year? He's done nothing to warrant the contract. He was, I think he had one really high level year with Anaheim. And there's been a lot of diminishing returns ever since. It's absurd. It's the contract. Look, Artie Moreno is desperate for a winner. Artie Moreno has a lot of money. But we've learned over the years, if you're going to spend, you don't spend $250 million on a first baseman.
Well, and I think the other thing is you don't spend $250 million on what a player has done in the past.
Right.
Like, I think his contract, more than any other contract in the last 20 years, has changed the way that analytics and GMs look at contracts, where we're not going to pay you for what you did. We need to pay you for what you're going to do. Because the contracts that Artie Moreno handed out, along with Albert Pujols, let's throw them out there, shall we? Josh Hamilton. Yeah, that didn't end very well.
No, that wasn't
great. CJ Wilson. That didn't end very well either.
No. Whatever happened to CJ Wilson?
He got hurt. He was a 31-year-old lefty. Matt Harvey. $10 million for like 3 starts. And Albert Pujols, 10 years, $241 million. And like you said, he played 1 or 2 decent years at the beginning of that contract. And
1 or 2 above average years.
And teams are now spending the money on what you're going to do, right? You're going to sign Mike Trout
at Fernando Tatis. Right.
Even Francisco Lindor.
Signs Trevor Story.
Right. Any of these guys you're going to sign in the 26 to 27 year range, not in the 31 to 32-year-old range, where you basically have already ended your prime. And the unfortunate part about Pujols is that it seems like everybody else realizes what his decline has been. And the only person that doesn't understand it is him. And
right, but that's normal. Like, no one ever wants to acknowledge that their prime is gone, that they're not what they used to be. We talk about this with Carmelo.
Sure.
How many times did this circle of life continue until Carmelo was literally out for a year and said, okay, I get it. I'm not a number 1 scorer anymore, but I can be a complimentary guy on a good team. And he sucked it up, became a complimentary player on a good team. And, he'll be, if he wants to come back next year, he'll be there as the 3rd or 4th option.
Yeah.
In baseball, but in basketball, that can be hidden a little bit and you can be taken out. You can maneuver. You can't really do that in baseball.
Well, especially if you can't field, right? So you're taking So I play in this fantasy league team.
You play in a fantasy league team? I'm stunned.
Fantasy baseball, which is only offense. So it's got 3 outfielders and a DH. And then you have your normal spots. And when you get a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, or you get a guy like Albert Pujols that is just a DH, you realize how limited you are with the rest of your lineup. In that, if you want that guy, and I don't have either one, but last year I had Jose Abreu, who only was, or 2 years ago, who only played DH. And you realize that if he's sitting in your DH spot every single game, you have no flexibility with the rest of your lineup to get another bat in the game. And since Pujols can't play another position, there's no spot for him on these teams. He can't go to a National League team. And unless he wants to be off the bench, which he has said he will not do. I mean, there are a couple of teams in the American League that you could see potentially. Maybe Kansas City, where he goes back to where he's from, or maybe Chicago, where Tony La Russa is
coaching like it's 1998 again, so he would fit well.
Right, but the problem is, who are you benching for these guys? Again, no position that he can play. So he either and when I say forced retirement, I don't see any team taking a shot on him, even for the limited amount. The last time that I remember a forced retirement like this was Barry Bonds. But Barry Bonds was able to still hit. That's the big difference.
Iverson?
Maybe. That's not a bad comp. Yeah, Iverson, who wanted to continue playing. Yeah. I mean that's
well,
that's
but we've
good.
seen this, we've seen a lot of these guys go out on their shield, but it's just been sad. I was going
to throw Don Mattingly into that and say, is that because it's injury to me? Like
Mattingly, look at Mattingly's stats his last year. They were not terrible.
No,
I don't.
That's true.
No, Mattingly doesn't fit. Now, again, I'm a Yankee fan, and Mattingly is beloved by all Yankee fans because he's probably the only great player they've ever had who never won a title, other than, I guess, Mussina. But pretty much every other one has won a title at some point. But Mattingly was the best player in baseball, or top three from about 85 to 88, 85 to 89. But even playing in 93, 94 before Tino came in, he was still a solid player. He hadn't gotten to a 240 with 5 home runs guy. He just wasn't what he was.
You're right.
I think you're looking, and you compare more of the all-time greats. John Unitas going to the Chargers. Weird.
Sure. Yeah.
What's I going to say?
Namath with the Rams.
Namath with the Rams. Emmitt Smith with the Arizona Cardinals.
Forgot about that.
I don't even remember what team Jerry Rice retired with.
Babe Ruth with the Braves, right? I mean, there are baseball players in that ballpark as well. We're not sure. Just limiting this.
We're not discriminating against.
No, there are good players that rode out into the sunset, but it wasn't really a sunset at that point. It was
right, but also, and Jordan talked about this because Jordan had ownership with the Wizards, and when he came back, and the discussion was, this is what you do, this is what you love to do, this is what you know. What else are they going to do? This is what you love more than anything else in the world. Even if you're not, it really depends on how much you care if your legacy is somewhat fractured at the end. But look at the people we're talking about. Jordan's legacy has never been fractured. Unitas' legacy has never been fractured. Namath's legacy is all predicated on the Super Bowl in '69, so it doesn't matter anyway. I mean, the legacy thing, I don't think makes a difference. These people love the sport. They do it because they love the sport, and they want to keep playing. So I don't begrudge them for it at all.
So you don't think that Pujols' legacy is fractured by any of this?
Pujols is different, though. Pujols didn't play hang on a year or two too long. Pujols' entire last 10 years of his career were a downward crescendo. Right. That's the difference. Jordan still averaged 20 with the Wizards.
Oh, I wasn't talking about any of the other guys. I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, no. I think he absolutely got diminished because people don't remember it. Steve
Calton's another one. Steve Calton hung on and hung on and hung on. And I believe Steve Calton played 5 years.
The White Sox?
No, with like every team. So
but
Steve
nobody
Carlton finished with 329 wins, which is an amazing stat.
Yeah.
And not that wins are everything, but he went 27-10. He went 6. Like he pitched his last 5 years from 1984 to 1988. It's 4 years. He played with Philly, San Francisco, Chicago, Cleveland, and Minnesota in 5 years.
Also, nobody liked Steve Carlton.
Oh, that's part.
Nobody wanted to keep him.
Oh,
they kept him in the Cincy and Philly because he was so good. Once he wasn't as good, his personality did not exactly exude leadership.
His last 5 years, he goes 16-37 with a 5.21 ERA.
Who remembers that?
I guess I do, but
you because you're a weirdo. But people remember Carlton for 27-10 on a team that won 59 games in 72. And for all those of you who don't think I know baseball, right there, suck it. So
he's absolutely right, by the way. 27-10.
I'm not looking at this. This is off the top of my head. I used to know this crap. He led the team in 80 to the World Series.
Yeah.
I mean, he was
he was a monster.
Exactly. But he didn't sign a $250 million deal for the last 5 years of his career.
So is that the legacy? The $200 million deal that did
the legacy is this. If he signed a monster contract after his prime. Now, his legacy is he's a top 3 first baseman of all time. But his legacy has been diminished because it wasn't the last year or two that he hung on too long. It was the last 10 years he was irrelevant.
The interesting thing is if he had retired after the first 10 years, let's say the first 12, right? Let's take the first 2.
Mm-hmm.
He would be in the discussion with Gehrig.
Mm-hmm.
He would. That's the sad part, is that he would have been.
It's really, really hard to trump Gehrig.
Oh, agreed.
He is the single most difficult position probably in baseball, just like it would be very, very difficult for any defenseman to trump Bobby Orr. It's very, very difficult to trump him. But Pujols would be much higher. There'd be no question that he would be the definitive number 2. And now, again, we're talking falling to 3. We're not exactly talking a massive drop. Right. But nobody puts him on the same echelon as Gehrig at this point.
So your first, including the first year in Los Angeles, he averaged, along with all the years in St. Louis, so that's 12 years, from age 21 to 32. He averaged 40 homers, 120 RBIs, a 325 batting average, and an OPS of 1.02. Like, that is insanity as far, and granted, RBIs are not everything anymore, but let's take the culmination of all the full years of Gehrig. Okay, so we said 40 and 120 is Pujols. Gehrig is 35 and 142. So less homers, more RBIs. 1.08 OPS. Like, you're talking about minuscule delineations between the two of these guys in those years. And that was 13 years as opposed to 12 years for Pujols. So he retires after 12 years, and he's definitely in this discussion. But 10 years later, as you said, here we are. Okay, so Seth, it's 6 o'clock. Next week we will talk NBA. We'll make our predictions on the NBA and NHL playoffs, and hopefully nobody else will retire. So or get fired by James Dolan. So darn it, I had it. That's Seth. I'm Sean. Seth and Sean Sports Radio, and we'll talk to you guys soon. I think you're having my baby.
I think I'm voguing. Okay, peace out, guys.
See you guys. Have a great week.